So with that, let's have some fun. Now, today we're here to talk about what's next, and it's the evolution of how we're going to work differently in post-COVID-19 times. And the reality is that we're in a time now where the only constant is change. And this was said back by a pre-Socratic philosopher named Heraclitus. And when he said it then, he may have known that today that would still be true. And the world that we're in is shifting. The number of mobile connected devices per capita is going to reach 1.5 by next year. By 2020, at the end of this year, more people will own a phone than have electricity. And that's not to say that everybody's going to have the iPhone 36, the new Android phone, but rather it's text-based phones. And they may walk 5 miles or 10 kilometers once a week to charge their phone in the middle of town. Or maybe they're lucky enough to have a cook stove that can suck the heat off of the stove, transfer it into electricity, and charge their phones that way. Now, things happen really rapidly in our lives. You see these companies here, and what you might not realize is that all of the companies and entities listed in front of you on the screen right now didn't exist 11 years ago. That's amazing. Think of their impact in your life over the last 11 years alone. The world is moving very, very fast. And that fast pace that we're in right now is oftentimes being referred to as the fourth industrial revolution. And that's a merging of the physical and biological worlds. Now, before we get into that a little bit more, I know that you went to school a long time ago. Maybe it was more recently for some of the people that are watching, but the reality is that there are 4 different instances of it. The first revolution was steam, second is electricity, third is computing, and now is intelligence. And what I mean by intelligence is we really will start seeing and are seeing a fusion of the physical, digital, and biological worlds, and it has a potential to impact all disciplines. And in that, the essence of human existence is really going to be challenged. Right now, Bob is mortal. If he walked in front of a bus, guess what? He's going to get hit by that bus and may get injured. He may actually die. Bob, we're going to miss you if that happens. Hopefully you know to look both ways. But what if science and technology can make it so we're amortal? We can live forever unless something happens. Is Bob no longer going to go out into the street? And if you think about it in COVID times, that's why we're staying at home right now. Most of us sheltering in place is because we are mortal. But what if we could go out and we could actually control our environment that you could live forever? And eventually, like Keith Richards, we become immortal and we upload our consciousness into the web and we can actually live forever in a different state. That's a whole nother conversation. If you're curious about that though, there's something called the Kardashev scale of civilizations. We are not even at type 1 as humanity. Eventually, when we get to type 5, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years from now, we'd be able to control all the matter in the universe. That's again, a chat for another time. Right now, we are in the middle of the future of cities, the future of humanity, the future of work, of music, of medicine, really of everything. People are developing rocket suits. We have robots that can help us, computers that are dreaming, and we're even talking about trillionaires that can mine asteroids. Or if you want to go back to the hyperlocal, you can now actually buy a 3-foot avocado in Florida, which is pretty tasty. It's 20 bucks. Now, our world around us is changing, and it's not just because of COVID. Alibaba is the most valuable retailer. It has no inventory. Uber has no cars. Airbnb owns no hotel rooms. And Facebook creates no content other than those silly videos that reminds you that your friend and you met a year ago or 5 years ago. And that's not a person that's even creating that. That's AI. It's the computers creating that on our own. And as you check the news, it happens very fast. Parents may be one day morally obligated to edit their baby's genes. Cashierless stores are using AI to catch shoplifters. Killers have confessed based on sketches of them from their DNA. And this goes on and on and on, too fast for any one person to focus. So here's what you need to know. Traditionally, 3 months ago, your planning horizons for your business were traditionally now, up to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, and 10 years plus. And you really decided how you were going to focus on problems based on these planning horizons. But in the new times of COVID, things are changing. In your offices, you may have somebody that said 3 months ago, we are not going to change to a digital transformation anytime soon. Things are good as normal. But guess what? The COVID-19 wrecking ball is here and we're all working from our homes. Things are changing. And when I say we're all working from our homes, always remember to never speak in absolutes. There are plenty of people that are still having to go to work, first responders, so on and so forth. So with that, Let's hop in. Let's look at a window to our future. Traditionally, if we had a lot more time, and I do these in sessions from 45 minutes to literally a day or two, we can go through all of these topics and more. We're only going to focus on the first two, data and trends, and the new normal today. The crux of everything that we need to talk about is based in data. Data is going to inform your decisions about how you design buildings, how you design workplaces, and how people actually can get their work done in the new economy as it relates to COVID and the fourth industrial revolution. Fun fact, it took 200,000 years for the human population to reach 1 billion and only 200 years to reach 7 billion. That's a rapid exponential growth. And today, more than 90% of all of the data in the world was created in the last 2 years alone. That's an amazing amount of data. And if you look at this graph, what's actually really interesting is the vast majority of that is not from businesses per se, it's from consumers, it's from sensors and devices, it's from the content that we're consuming and creating on our multimedia devices. Around the world, people are also diving in. 7.75 billion people in the world are online, that's 55% of the world. And penetration by region really does have some variation. If you look at North America, 88%, but in Middle Africa, we're still looking at 22%. And there's also ecosystems. So it applies for us in America, doesn't necessarily apply other places. If you're going to text message someone here and not use your phone in America, you're probably using Facebook. Go to China, guess what? You're using WeChat. Different ecosystems, different events, different truths. Now, adults are certainly getting online more than they were years ago. We finally hit that crossover where television and mobile time has shifted. You're spending more time on your phones and your devices than watching TV. And we're seeing things that are helping us get around our daily lives, like Google Lens and AR image analysis. When you walk into a building, you can hold up your phone, walk around. You don't have to hold a map anymore, a touchless economy, and it can translate signs for you on the go. Technology is bringing people together in faster ways. And you see the old nomenclature, old phrase or metaphor or picture 1,000 words. This is 1,000 words describing a duck jumping into water. Maybe a picture really is worth 1,000 words. And today, that's why people are going back to Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat. And what's funny about that is we're actually just going full 360. So these are hieroglyphs. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. And that shapes everything that we're going to see and talk about as it pertains to the workplace in just a minute or two. Now, what happens in America is also different from around the world. You obviously know that. The Chinese market is massive, notwithstanding adjustments that are going on right now. And we have to make sure that we are planning for the future. Last year I was, or I guess a year and a half ago, I was an Eisenhower Fellow. I spent a month in China learning about blockchain, future of work, augmented reality, and a few other technologies. And they are a bellwether of technology that is going to impact us going forward. They had offices like Amazon Go, where you could walk in and all facial recognition to get into your office. Again, touchless. Online, massive sales days, massive sales days, like Singles Day, that they're selling to consumers around the country that outpace anything like Black Friday in America. And eventually, our reality, if we had augmented reality glasses, contact lenses, or even bionic eyes, could start to look like this. I hope personally I can turn this view off. That's a video. It's called Hyper Reality. Google it. It's on Vimeo. Fantastic. So that takes us to our new normal. And the new normal really is a new normal with a caveat, and that's the COVID-19 caveat. It's that nobody knows how things will turn out, but that doesn't mean that we can't use data to make predictions to help us understand what might change. And just in America, if you look at the curve right now with the COVID growth, there are other countries in the world that have taken steps and adjusted to prevent and also react that we have not and sometimes have embraced. We'll talk about those in a few minutes. Now, many of you who are watching, I imagine, are at home in a newfound work environment that for a few weeks or a few months may actually be manageable. But the question that I pose to you is, can you really work on the couch with your kid snuggling the cat next to you for 3 months, for 6 months? Maybe you lose it a little bit, and on the bottom right, you start wearing fun outfits just to spice up your environment. Or for me, this is what I actually have at my workstation right now in front of me. Bob asked me to show it to you. It's a desktop computer with an LED ring light, a boom mic, wireless headsets, wireless mouse and keyboard. We'll talk about why this might be important for you in a few minutes. Now, with all of this change, life is unexpectedly strange for a lot of people, and you're not alone. This is an example of something that was posted on Reddit. In 18 hours, there were 16,000 upvotes and hundreds of comments because people are losing motivation in some ways, and they're feeling that they don't have the sense of community that they may have had before. And it's gotten to the point where people like in Maryland are literally going to their mailboxes without pants on. This is not just limited to Maryland, though. If you look down, I'm willing to bet that the majority of us are not wearing shoes. Now, there is empirical evidence for this also. Shirt sales at Walmart are booming, but not pants, because we are in this new reality that's going to shift how we purchase, how we interact, how offices are set up, and everything in between. Now, this is a great example.
Get this work done. Oh, finally, the week is over. It's the weekend, baby!
Right? And that's really how our lives are right now. So we're going to go over 4 quick things today. 1 is environments and design. 2 is the home office reimagined. 3 is a few final trends and tools. And then we're going to give you a nice little bonus primer of the unknown and unforeseen circumstances. Again, as you're watching, type your question in the Q&A. Type live if you have a question, and we'll bring you into the chat with me and Bob afterwards. Now let's start with environments and design. Right now, we're supposed to keep 1 alligator distance in between people, 6 to 12 feet, depending on the size of your alligator. Sometimes they grow bigger than others. But what that means is that the current work environments that people are oftentimes finding themselves in now, if you're thinking about the traditional office, isn't going to sustain the distance requirement that is being recommended. So guess what? Those open floor plans are about to go away. If you're on the fence of open floor plans being the dumbest management fad of all times, you should be very happy. On the other hand, people are saying, wait a minute, we now need more space because we have to separate people in their workspace. So what are the considerations that go into building a workspace that is 6 feet apart? Is it going to look more spread out like this? Do we actually revert back to cubicles that have full walls to the ceiling or offices? What are the design considerations that we need to be thinking about? And it's not just the physical office spaces that we're thinking about. It's also how people have the egress into and degress out of the buildings. If you can only have 4 people on an elevator at once now, or 2 people on an elevator at once, how are you going to get an entire office up to the 64th floor? Are people taking the stairs? Is there going to be a queue outside like we're seeing in Costco right now around the country? Nobody knows. Now, there also might be a revisionist idea of how people should get around cities. So I'm sure you've seen stuff like this where 1 busload of people takes this many bikes off the road and this many cars off the road. But now, what if we don't want people getting crammed into mass transit, because that's a great place for people to spread diseases and things of that nature. And instead, we now have to reconfigure cities to really encourage people to bike instead. So we can't go full mass transit, but something in between. And if you think about how much space is actually dedicated to cars to keeping people aside, you start to think, what's actually possible? Is it augmented reality where people are logging into offices? Is it autonomous driving where people no longer have to drive or live close to the office because their cars can drive them from 50 miles out of the city when they're sleeping? We'll see what happens. And there's also going to be an obligation and a fiduciary duty of companies that have offices to provide services to the people that visit and work in those offices. How do you maintain a clean environment in the lobby if you're a JBG or a JLL or someone else? Now, certainly we're talking about basic things like Purell and hand sanitizer wipes, but it's going to go on much deeper and farther than that. We're talking about infrared sensors that can tell if people have temperatures that are walking into the building. We're talking about voice recognition and AI recognition to see what people look like, to make sure that they have access, and even health centers that if you have a temperature, you immediately get shifted off and they can do protocol to see if there's a rapid antibody test if it's available for people as they walk into the office. Or even AI that says, wait a minute, we saw you walking up the street, you didn't have an air mask on. Guess what? We need you to go and work from home today. So then the questions go, how much privacy do we need to be thinking about, and what are the privacy concerns on a state, federal, international, and national level? Everything is up in the air. Now, WeWork, for example, one of the largest co-working facilities out there, they are actually the largest. They're thinking about how they're going to change shared offices. But what if you need a company, I don't know, like Swing Space out of DC, that can help you work more in a traditional office space So you can still sublet your smaller area because you don't want to be in a general co-working area where there's more traffic. Where is this going to go? Nobody knows yet. And also, as you're considering how you're building buildings, you're going to start realizing that there's consultants and other groups that are going to be more involved in the process that you might not traditionally engage with as much. You may be familiar with acoustic consultants that help you understand how your offices sound. But what if you start thinking about airflow within and external to your building? Because we need to make sure that this individual area reduces the flow of air to the next office over because somebody might get sick. Or maybe you just need to install better air ventilation that every single office has a separate unique flow outside so there's a higher rate flow. Things are going to change. Or you may hear from your employees that they want all copper toilets and all copper bathrooms because copper supposedly kills viruses. Some things are practical, some things are not, and we're all going to have to find that happy medium. In other places, oftentimes used in hospitals right now, there's UV lights that are used to kill certain bacteria and viruses and whatnot. What if every single new office is going to have UV lights built in at night for 2 hours after cleaning, the entire place gets UV flooded? And that's not just in offices. Like I said, there's robots that are doing this in hospitals, but this new low touch economy that minimizes everything is really going to become everywhere. We've already seen a push to no-touch faucets and no-touch doors that you can open with your foot. But what if you can take it a step further where you have an LED light that shows you the temperature of the water and also turns off after you've washed your hands for 20 seconds automatically? New business lines, new business opportunities are going to pop up. And then you think, wait a minute, does this apply across the full spectrum of where people are living in terms of density, whether it be metro cities, suburbs, villages, or rural areas? And we'll get to that too. So as people are shifting out of their home offices or to their home offices from their offices in traditional office buildings in higher density locations, you start thinking about where people are located and their environments. Obviously, we don't all have an amazing home office like this. That would be fantastic, though I imagine some of you out there are going, wait a minute, there's no railings. Clearly, there can be no children that live in this building. But what that really means is that we've all become a type of digital nomad. And maybe you haven't traveled as far as Fiji to work in a hammock as you're doing your work, but rather we're people that are at our houses that are trying to maximize our experiences. And these are experiences that can be augmented and improved by simple additions as your employees or people that you are designing for may request. It's microphones so they sound better, better monitors so they're not hunched over. It's LED ring lights so you don't have that old, bad, horrible, terrible lighting in front of you, upgraded cameras, it's headphones so you don't bother people, and wireless keyboards so you can move on the go. The necessity of kits and BYOB and BYOD, rather bring your own device to work, is going to explode in the near future. And then people are going to get creative. I can't work inside for this reason, so instead I've gone outside, but I couldn't read my computer because of the glare. I put it inside a box. So now people are going to start doing life hacking skills to make their own work environments a little bit better. Me personally, I'm a little bit of a clean freak sometimes. I've even gone out to buy UV sanitizers for my phones. If I go out to a restaurant and put it on the table, I want to be able to rapidly clean my devices and what I have as I'm moving around the city. Here's a bigger one by the front door that I can throw an iPad or keys into. People are also going to start asking for molecule devices and things like this. This is a great home heater or home air conditioner, rather. It's a filter. None of these products are sponsored or whatnot. These are things that I actually use in my daily life. And companies are noticing that there's an opportunity out there to retrofit people's homes into offices. Whether or not everybody has the ability to do this is a whole nother conversation. But as we start thinking about that, maybe there's an opportunity for things that once were in fad to come back. This is an example of a trundle bed or a Murphy bed that folds down from the wall. Home offices are going to get upgrades now. And these home offices may even be provided by employers for certain type of executives or employees where they have a fully modular potted out building that gets delivered when you're hired. It goes in your backyard. This is where you work during your hours, and afterwards the door closes and you go back to your normal life, to help us avoid that Trevor Noah clip that we showed a few minutes ago. Now here are a few final trends and tools. We don't live in a world now where we can gather like this in Times Square for New Year's. I have no idea how this is going to look this year. It's going to be really interesting. Maybe people start moving outside of the cities because the dense urban environments don't provide the value that they once did. Restaurants, museums, parks, quick commute to work, food, all of those things. And maybe there's a fine happy medium where there's a suburban renewal that goes on as well. Regardless of where people end up, the times of working in Corona have changed, and they are here, and they will be around for a very long time. This is our new reality that is not going away. So with that, take humor in what's going on, like this woman who forgot to turn off her camera as she went to the toilet during a conference call. Video calls are a thing. Just be cognizant of who you are and where you are. Embrace the SaaS tools that are out there. If you have younger employees in your office, ask them what they think you should be doing and installing. Maybe it's even soundproofing panels that can be delivered to people's home offices so they can help get away. Green screens in the background, better cameras, you name it. Expect that there's going to be more automation in factories, in office buildings, and restaurants, and even grocery shopping that is going to have a profound effect on design considerations. And as you're developing these public spaces, these convening areas that are oftentimes so important might no longer be as feasible as they once were. If you look into factories, this will become a new normal. If employees cannot get in and business must go on, robotics is going to take an even bigger jump. And we're not just talking about robots for factories. We're talking about molecular robots, cloud bots, and a whole host of other things. And as we do get back to work, things will shift as well. This is an example of auto workers in Wuhan that return to work that are on their lunch break. This isn't something that looks fun to most people, but this might be a reality that we need to start designing for. So let's talk about the unknown and the unforeseen circumstances before we get to the questions, and there are several that are rolling in right now. The first is that we have to think of the things that may happen as an unintended consequence that we might not think of. So if prices of fuel for gas goes down right now, that means there's going to be a decrease in fuel tax revenue for cities and countries around the world. What happens then if the money isn't there, right? DC, for example, got hundreds of millions of dollars, I believe, in the last few years from speeding tickets. If people aren't driving anymore, guess what? Those funds are not available anymore. How do we adjust? Maybe there's other opportunities. If people are moving out to suburbia, if they're moving out into rural areas, broadband access is going to become even more important to make sure that people can connect. And then you can look at where are the opportunities that people aren't thinking about. So by analyzing 50 million Google Street images in 200 cities, a researcher recently found out that they could ascertain race, income, voting, and shopping patterns from the neighborhoods that they're looking at. So where can you find those opportunities that you have a data set that's available that can help you reconfigure for the future going forward? And a fun example of this is if you recognize the flag, it's Switzerland. What Switzerland oftentimes is known for is their chocolates on the one hand and their fine jewelry on the other, notwithstanding banking. But what happens when you refine fine jewelry is tiny shards of it get broken off and end up going into the sewers. And every year they find millions of dollars of gold and silver in the sewers there that they process and pull back. There are millions of dollars of opportunity out there as this new world is going to hit us, and it's going to hit hard. And the question is, how are you preparing for it? So with that, we're just about 25 minutes in, which is exactly where we wanted to hit. Don't be a stranger if you need to find me. Adam Zuckerman on LinkedIn, Adam Z on Twitter.